Okay, so now we are expanding the polynomial, which is actually very similar to what we just did, you guys. So, let's get going. Now, even though this says expand, this is not what this means, which this is kind of a board slapper, so brace yourself. This does not equal this. Although, yes, this got wider, this is not what expanding the polynomial means, and this should be an x, not a y. But anyways, that's just some polynomial humor for you guys. So, expanding the polynomial, since it's not what this is, let's talk about what it is. So, what this means, let's talk about what exponents mean, you guys. So, something to the third power. I'm going to use an example that does not pertain to this specific problem, but will kind of explain what we're going to do. Okay, so let's talk about what like 2 to the third means. So 2 to the third means I'm going to do 2 times 2 times 2. I'm going to multiply 2 to itself 3 times. Okay, so what 2x minus 3y means is we're going to multiply 2x minus 3y to itself 3 times, which basically means I'm going to write this bad boy out as many times as that exponent tells me to do. So I'm going to write this out 3 times. So it'll be 2x minus 3y times 2x minus 3y times 2x minus 3y. Okay, now the reason why we do this, a lot of my students think that, oh, when we see an exponent out, we can just distribute it to each of these. No, you cannot do that when there's a plus or a minus sign in between them. That's when the demon cats get us. So this also does not equal. So that's a does not equal sign if you look at it this way. I guess it's more right side up like this. If I can get it. Like that, I guess. But anyway, so this definitely also does not equal 2x to the third minus 3y to the third. No, never. The demon cats will get you if there's a subtraction or addition sign in between two terms and you raise that exponent to each of them. That does not equal that. Don't even think about doing that or the demon cats will get you. Write it out as many times as that exponent says. Okay, so what we're going to do, you guys, we're going to start by multiplying these two polynomials together, and eventually we'll multiply this one to it. We're just going to ignore it and act like that one does not exist right now. So for now, we're going to multiply these two together and ignore this one. Okay, so we're going to start distributing like we did in our previous problem. So I'm going to start with 2x and multiply that bad boy to each of the values in this term. Again, ignoring this one. I'm not distributing out to this one. Don't even think about it. Okay, so I'm going to do 2x times 2x, which 2 times 2 gives me 4. Okay, and then we're going to add the exponents together, which I don't see any exponents, so secretly there are 1s there. So 1 plus 1 will give me a 2, so this is an x squared, like that. 4x squared. Okay, and now I'm going to take my 2x and multiply it to the negative 3y. So 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And x and y, well, those are not like variables, so I cannot combine any exponents. So I'm just going to write x, y. Alright, and now I'm going to start with the second variables. So my second term, so the negative 3y. And I'm going to multiply it to each of these terms, just like I did. Alright guys, so let's multiply the coefficients and then add the variables exponents together. So negative 3 times 2 gives me a negative 6. And I can't combine my y and my x, so I'm just going to leave it as xy. Okay, now technically you could write this as yx. xy is the same as yx. The reason why I'm writing it as xy because I see before me that there's a like term that I'm going to be eventually combining this to. So it helps you guys if you write your like terms kind of in the same way. It's not wrong to write this as negative 6yx, but it might be harder to see that they're like terms. So I'm just going to leave it just like that. Okay, let's multiply our last term. So negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. And y times y, well, secretly, since I don't see any exponents, both of their exponents are to the first power. And 1 plus 1 gives me a y squared. Okay, now, the next step, before I think about this one right here, I must combine all my like terms. If you guys combine your like terms before you multiply it to the next one, you will have a much smaller amount of terms to deal with, which means you will have to multiply less in the future. So, I always recommend you combine like terms before you start multiplying it to the next parenthesis. So let's start combining our like terms. Alright, so I'm going to start with 4x squared. I don't see any other x squared terms to combine to, so I'm just going to bring that bad boy on down. Okay, next I'm going to look at my xy. So I have a negative 6xy. I'm going to look to see if any other terms have an xy in it. Holy hot dog, you guys, right there. That one has an xy in it. Okay, so remember, when you combine like terms, leave the variables alone. Don't touch them. So I'm going to write xy down before I try to touch them. But I am going to combine these two. So negative 6 minus 6 more is negative 12xy. And lastly, my 9y squared. Well, I don't have anything to combine to this. So I'm just going to bring it on down. Plus 9y squared. Okay, so I've combined my like terms. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to be multiplying this right here. So my 4x squared negative 12xy plus 9y squared, I'm going to multiply that to that parenthesis I was ignoring until now. The 2x minus 3y. Okay, so at the start we ignore it, but eventually we have to deal with it. Okay, you guys, and we do the same thing we just did. We're going to start with the first term, multiply it to each of these, then move on to the next term, multiply it to each of these, and then move on to the final term and multiply it to each of these. Who's ready? I'm totally ready, so let's get going. Okay, I'm going to start with my 4x squared, and I'm going to multiply it to my 2xy. So 4 times 2 gives me 8. And x squared times x, well, there's secretly a 1 in the exponent if I don't see one. And 2 plus 1 gives me 3. So this would be 8x to the third. Alright, then I'm going to take my 4x squared and multiply it to my negative 3y. So 4 times negative 3 gives me a negative 12. And x squared times y, well, I don't have any like variables right there, so I have no exponents to combine. So this is just going to be x squared y. So this one is donezo. Alright guys, I'm going to move to my next term, which is my negative 12xy, and I'm going to multiply it to each of these. So negative 12xy times 2x, I got negative 12 times 2, that will give me a negative 24. And x times x, well, this one doesn't have an exponent, so secretly there's a 1 there. And 1 plus 1 gives me 2, or an x squared. Alright, and then my y has nothing to combine to, so I just bring it down. Why? Alright, now I'm going to take my negative 12xy and multiply it to negative 3y. So negative 12 times negative 3 gives me positive 36. Okay, x times y, well, I don't have any x's to combine to, so I'm just going to bring my x on down. And y times y, well, secretly, both of those have a 1 in their exponent since I don't see anything, and 1 times 1 gives me y squared. So bam, my second term is donezo. And lastly, I got my 9y squared. I'm going to multiply it to both of those terms. Starting with the first one, 9 times 2 gives me 18. Okay, y and x, I don't have any y's or x to combine to. Okay, so when I write this down, I'm going to check to see if there are any other terms that contain a y squared and an x. That way I can write it kind of just like that. So let's see, any other terms with a y squared in it and an x. Holy hot dog right here. This one I wrote x, then y squared. So I'm going to try to write this term as an x and then a y squared so it looks like its other like term. So this will just be x, y squared. Alright, and then I'm going to take that and multiply it to the last term. So 9 times negative 3 is negative 27. Okay, and y squared times y to the first, well, 2 plus 1 gives me y to the third. Holy hot dog, you guys, we have multiplied all of that together. Alright, my last step is to combine all like terms. Now, since we have more than one variable in the mix, it's kind of hard to say, well, this is the highest exponent, then this is the next one, then this is the next one, because they're all kind of mixed together. So this one, it doesn't really matter which term we write first and last. Usually we start with the x term and end with the y and write the numbers with x and y in between, but it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to start with my 8x cubed. All right, let's see if there's any other x cubed terms to combine it to. I don't see any, so I'm just going to bring it on down. 8x to the third. All right, my next term from left to right is this negative 12x squared y. So I'm going to look for some other x squared y terms. Holy hot dog, I see one right here, you guys. Bam. Okay, so remember, when you combine like terms, do not touch the exponents. Okay, so I'm going to bring them down before I even try to touch them, my x squared y. And then I'm going to combine the numbers in front. So negative 12 minus 24 more gives me a negative 36. All right, my next term from left to right is this positive 36xy squared. I'm going to see if there are any other terms with an xy squared. I see one right here. So I'm going to be combining these two together. I combine these two. Now I'm going to combine these two, which that give me that. Okay, so remember, we don't touch the exponents when we combine like terms. So I'm going to bring down my x, y squared before I try to touch them. And then I'm going to add the numbers in front. So 36 plus 18, that is going to give me, let's see, 54. And it'll be a positive 54. All right, and lastly, this is my final term, and nothing is left to combine it to. So this one went here, and I'm just going to bring down my last term, negative 27y to the third. And bam, this would be our final answer. So this one is officially donezo, you guys. Bam. Oh no, didn't mean to chop that off. Alright, so my final answer is 8x to the third minus 36x squared y plus 54xy squared minus 27y to the third. Awesome job, you guys.